Oliver the Ornament, written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Teddy Lou. The smell of Thanksgiving dinner was still in the air. The guests had gone home hours ago, and now it was time for Henry and Holly to go to bed. Tomorrow was going to be a big day. Tomorrow they were going to decorate their Christmas tree. Mom and Dad tucked both of them in, and then went to bed themselves. Soon, the whole family was in dreamland. But not everyone in the Nelson household was dreaming. Oh no, not at all. In fact, some were just getting up from a very, very long nap. You see, packed away deep in the Nelson attic were many boxes filled with some of the family's most precious possessions. These boxes were filled with their cherished Christmas ornaments. There was Belle, a very cute little Belle, and Abby, a sweet church. There was Norb, a German singer, and Teddy, an adorable bear. There was Buck, a lovable old moose, and Edsel, a fiery fire truck. There was Crystal, a dazzling snowflake, and Fraser, a glorious Christmas tree. There was Mary, a bright and shiny wreath, and for the top of the tree, there was a pair of beautiful angels named Marley and Joan. The most special of all the ornaments, though, was Oliver, a little boy who was the Nelsons' very first Christmas ornament. "Hey, Oliver, wake up! It's time to get ready. Tomorrow's our big day," said Belle. "Oh, Belle, is it that time already?" Oliver asked in a sleepy voice as he rubbed his eyes. "You sure look nice," he added. Belle liked Oliver because he often said nice things to her and the other ornaments. Suddenly, Edsel zoomed by with his red lights flashing and sirens screaming. "Whoa, slow down, Edsel. You'll run someone over," Oliver shouted as he jumped out of the way. "Don't tell me to slow down. You're useless," Edsel replied. One by one, the Nelson ornaments were rising from their 3-season sleep. They danced, they sang, but most of all, they cleaned themselves off for the big day ahead of them. "What happened to your arm, Oliver?" Belle asked. "Oh, it broke this summer, but it's okay," Oliver said. "It doesn't hurt too much. It just kind of looks funny." "Ha! Now you can't do anything the rest of us can do," shouted Edsel. "You're useless," he teased. "I am not useless. I can do a lot of things," replied Oliver. "Oh yeah? Like what?" chimed in Buck. Well, I can, Oliver tried to stick up for himself, but he just couldn't find the right words. "Like I said, Oliver is useless," Edsel laughed again. Marley stuck up for Oliver, saying, "If you don't have something nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all, Edsel." But sadly, some of the other ornaments joined in on the laughter with Edsel. After the bullying of Oliver ended, the ornaments continued playing and dancing and shining themselves up for tomorrow's big day. Then, one by one, they hopped back in their boxes to get a good night's sleep. When all the ornaments were in their boxes, Edsel hopped back out and quietly tapped on Buck's box. "What's up, Edsel?" asked Buck. Edsel whispered back, "Hey, let's play a trick on Oliver." "Oh, let's just leave him alone," replied Buck. Edsel insisted, and Buck gave in. So they hid Oliver's box behind the Easter baskets, where no one could see it. Oliver knew something was going on, but Buck and Edsel had taped his box shut, so he couldn't open the top. "It's okay," Oliver told himself. "The Nelsons will come get me tomorrow. I just can't wait to see them. I love them so much." With those happy thoughts, he went to sleep. Oliver woke up extra early the next morning, hearing so much noise and commotion. Mom, Dad, Henry, and Holly were pulling box after box from the attic, the ornaments called home for so many months. Oliver didn't know his box had been hidden in the back corner, so he kept thinking he'd be taken next. But after a while, all Oliver heard was silence. "How will I ever get out of here? Will I miss Christmas? Oh no, that can't be," he thought. Poor Oliver then started to cry, but sadly, no one could hear him. Meanwhile, Mom, Dad, Henry, and Holly were busy hanging the ornaments on the tree. You could see the excitement on each ornament's face as it found its new home on this beautiful Christmas tree. When the tree was completely decorated, Mom wondered what had happened to Oliver. He'll turn up at some point. He just has to, she thought. Once the Nelson family left the room, Belle asked Edsel, "What did you do to Oliver?" "Nothing. I don't know anything," said Edsel. "Come on, Edsel. Oliver was the first ornament ever on the tree," pleaded Fraser. "What's the big deal?" said Crystal. "He's so old and he's useless." Teddy and Norb disagreed and shouted so all the ornaments could hear, "We have to find Oliver!" That evening, Mom and Dad went out for dinner. When the babysitter arrived, she asked Henry and Holly to help clean up by putting the ornament boxes into the attic. Henry and Holly did as they were asked. As they approached the attic, they heard crying from inside. It sounded like the crying was coming from a box behind the Easter baskets. Henry and Holly opened the box and saw Oliver, but he didn't want them to see him cry, so he pretended to be asleep. Henry and Holly then closed the box, thinking that Mom and Dad didn't want to hang Oliver up this year. He did, after all, have a broken arm. As they walked away, they heard crying again. They returned to the box, but once again saw a very still Oliver. This continued several more times until they opened the box and heard Oliver sneeze. "God bless you," said the children. "Thank you," replied Oliver. Henry and Holly were amazed, and Oliver was bewildered. He realized his cover was blown. After all, ornaments aren't supposed to be able to talk. "Who are you?" asked Holly. Oliver answered, "Close your eyes and start to imagine your mom and dad years ago. You see," he continued, "it was on their very first date. They were ice skating in the town square just before Christmas. I could see them from the window in the village shop where I was hanging. They then came into the shop, and your dad bought me for your mom. I think he bought me because my skates were just like his. Later, he gave me to her as he said goodnight. When she got home, she hung me on her tree. I was the only ornament on the tree at that time. From the smile on your mom's face, I knew right then and there that they were perfect for each other and that they would be together forever." Holly and Henry loved Oliver immediately, and they insisted he come down and claim his place on the tree. Oliver didn't think Mom and Dad wanted him on the tree, so he didn't want to go, but after some convincing, he agreed. As they walked down the stairs, all the ornaments except Edsel, Buck, and Crystal got very excited to finally see Oliver. "Tell us more stories, Oliver," said Henry. So Oliver started telling the stories of the family, like when Mom and Dad got engaged under their Christmas tree, and when they got married, and when Mom and Dad brought both Henry and Holly home from the hospital after they were born. Oliver told them stories of family gatherings and more good times than you could ever imagine. Then Oliver told them stories about all the different ornaments. One by one, he called out his friends on the tree, telling their stories and how each of them was so very special to Mom and Dad, like the fire truck ornament that was given to their parents when Henry was born, or the angels and church that were given to them to look out for a sick little girl, Oliver told them. Henry and Holly's eyes glowed with amazement and wonder. "You see, Henry and Holly," said Oliver, "every ornament tells a story." As he said this, Crystal started melting from her eyes, and tears started to roll down Edsel's headlights. And Buck was so upset he couldn't stop crying. He felt so bad about how he had treated Oliver. The babysitter came in and told Henry and Holly that it was time for them to go to bed. Henry and Holly kissed Oliver and told him that he was going on the tree. "Only if you put me on the back of the tree," Oliver pleaded. "I don't think your mom and dad wanted me on the tree this year." Henry and Holly disagreed, telling Oliver it was a misunderstanding, but they respected his wishes and placed him on the back of the tree. As they did, Oliver looked back at his new friends and winked at both of them. Once the children were upstairs and the brightly lit tree sat alone, Belle said, "Well, what do you have to say for yourself, Edsel?" "Oh, Oliver, I'm sorry. I guess I'm just, well, gee, I sure am sorry." "I really liked hearing all your stories," Edsel replied. Mary and Abby added, "What about you, Crystal?" She quickly responded, saying, "If I cry any more, I'll be a snowball instead of a snowflake. Oliver, I'm so sorry." "No worries," said Oliver. "We're all here, and we're all going to help the Nelsons have the best Christmas ever." Then Edsel said, "You know, Oliver, I'm in your place. You should be right here in the front of the tree." But everyone else said, "No, Edsel, you can't move yourself. Only people can move you." "I'm a fire truck, so I think I can handle it," he insisted. "Oliver, this is your spot." So Edsel unhooked his ladder from the tree and jumped to the next branch. But disaster struck. Edsel was falling off the tree, hitting one branch after another until he was almost to the floor, where he would surely shatter into 1,000 pieces. The ornaments all screamed, "Oh no!" Then, out of nowhere, Oliver swooped down and caught Edsel using his good arm. Edsel couldn't believe it. Oliver had swung, jumped, skated, and climbed down to save him. Oliver climbed back up the tree, carrying Edsel, and placed him in the front of the tree. Then he went back to his spot where Henry and Holly had placed him. All the ornaments cheered Oliver. Joan yelled out from the top of the tree, "Keep up the good work, Oliver," while the others all proclaimed, "You're a hero, Oliver." And embarrassed Oliver began to blush. Just then, Mom and Dad came home and said goodbye to the babysitter. As they sat in front of the tree, Mom said, "You know, I couldn't find Oliver today. He was our first ornament, and he's been with us since our first date. I'll have to find him tomorrow because it just wouldn't be Christmas without him. I love that little guy so much." Oliver heard this and got a big smile on his face and a tear in his eye. Dad looked toward the back of the tree and saw something glittering. As he looked closer, he realized it was coming from Oliver. What Dad saw was actually Oliver's tear of happiness. "Hey, Mom, look, you did bring Oliver out," said Dad. "No, I didn't. It must have been Henry or Holly," she replied. "But one thing's for sure, Oliver belongs on the front of the tree." Then Mom realized that Oliver's arm was broken. "Oh no, this can't be. I'll just have to fix this," she said. So she got a Christmas napkin and made a sling for Oliver's arm and placed it on him, making everything better for Oliver. And then Mom and Dad hung Oliver right in the front of the tree, just above Edsel, surrounded by Belle, Teddy, Abby, Norb, Crystal, and the rest of his friends. Mom and Dad turned off the lights on the tree and went to bed. But then the magic of Christmas lit the tree up again, and all the ornaments sang together. Oliver felt the Christmas spirit more than ever, knowing how much his family and friends loved him and how much he loved them in return. The next morning, Mom and Dad woke up Henry and Holly and brought them down to the tree. They told them that today they were going to hear about each of the ornaments on the tree and the stories that made them so very special. When Henry and Holly looked up, they saw that Oliver was on the front of the tree with his repaired arm in a sling. "Let's start with the first one," said Dad. "His name is Oliver." Henry and Holly looked at Oliver, and when Mom and Dad weren't looking, Oliver winked at them both. "We found this special guy on our very first date," continued Dad. And with that began Mom and Dad's story of each of their cherished Christmas ornaments. And so, dear friends, as you hang me on your tree this year, look around at all of your beautiful ornaments. Sit down in front of the tree with your family and have them tell you the stories of the ornaments next to me. You never know, there just might be another Oliver on your own Christmas tree, because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met Belle. Love, Oliver. Oliver the Ornament Meets Belle. Written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Teddy Lou. The Christmas season started with Mom and Dad telling Henry and Holly about each of the ornaments on their tree. That was just the beginning of story time for Henry and Holly, because even though every ornament tells a story, no one tells a story like an ornament. "I never get tired of hearing these stories," Crystal exclaimed after Mom and Dad were finished. "Me too," Edsel said. "But you know, there's a lot more to the story of how Belle entered their collection." "There sure is, and it gets us choked up every time," Marley and Joan said. Please tell us, Henry said. Oliver began by reminding Henry and Holly that at first he had been the only ornament on the tree. That didn't last long because the next day your mom came home with a box of beautiful shiny ornaments, Oliver said. One by one, she hung the ornaments on the tree, and suddenly I was surrounded by so many magical friends. Or so I thought. What do you mean? Holly asked. On that first day, I went up to each of the ornaments and introduced myself to them, Oliver explained. I went up to the red ornament and said, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Red Ornament." I went up to the blue ornament and said, "Hello, Miss Blue Ornament." And I jumped over a branch to the green ornament and said, "Hi, Mrs. Green Ornament." But sadly, none of them answered. That part is so sad, Buck said. It was, Oliver replied, but it didn't last long. You see, I began playing the most wonderful game of make-believe you could imagine. I went back to each of the ornaments and introduced myself again. I said, "Hello, Mr. Red Ornament. My name is Oliver." Mr. Red Ornament replied, "Hello, Oliver. My name is Edsel." I said, "Hello, Miss Blue Ornament." She responded, "Nice to meet you, Oliver. I'm Crystal." Then I got to Mrs. Green Ornament, and before I could even say hello, she said, "Hi, Oliver. I'm Mary." The children were amazed. Oliver's imagination had brought all the ornaments to life, and now they knew how the ornaments had gotten their names. "What did you do next?" the children asked. "The first thing we did was sing together. We all sang our favorite Christmas carols," Oliver said. Just then, all the ornaments heard a very scary laugh coming from the attic. Not wanting the children to hear the noise, the ornaments began singing Christmas carols, showing Henry and Holly what it had been like that very first Christmas. After they were done singing, the doorbell rang. When Henry and Holly answered it, they saw their friends Stephen and Ruthie. Mom and Dad bundled Henry and Holly up, and all of them went outside to build a snowman. Back in the living room, some of the ornaments were scared. "Where did that laugh come from, Oliver?" Belle asked in a frightened voice. "It's from a very mean ornament in the attic," Oliver said. "Her name is Nellie." Then they heard a much louder laugh that scared all of the ornaments even more. "Who's Nellie?" Abby asked. "I'm not really sure, but she's done some really naughty things," Oliver said. "She glued my ladder down so it only goes up one level," Edsel said. "She bullied me and called me old and useless," Buck added. "She pushed me in front of the window until I almost melted," Crystal said. Hearing these stories, Joan said, "We'll just have to talk to her and see why she's doing these things." But those who knew her were sure there would be no reasoning with Nellie. Joan whispered into Marley's ear, and then the two of them said, "We're going to visit Nellie. We've got to talk to her. It is Christmas, after all." "That sounds like a bad idea," Norb and Teddy shouted. But Marley and Joan were determined, so they flew off the tree and out the window to meet her. "If anyone can win her over, it's Marley and Joan," Fraser said. "They're both so nice." On the way to the attic window, Marley and Joan could see the children making their snowman and having so much fun. It was cold and snowy, and now it was starting to get dark. Marley and Joan were almost to the attic window when they heard a voice call out, "Why don't you come in here and play?" Once at the attic, Marley and Joan tried to open the window, but it was too heavy. "Oh, try a little harder," Nellie snickered. "I want to play with you." Marley and Joan put their backs to the window and pushed it up using their wings. Angels' wings are very strong, you know. But from inside the attic, Nellie pulled a cord, crashing the window down and trapping Marley and Joan by their wings. The two angels looked at each other, then looked back to see Nellie laughing at both of them. She was a frightening-looking ornament. "I guess we're in a pickle now," Marley said. Marley and Joan tried to open the window, but they couldn't lift it. They were getting cold and scared. Inside, Nellie laughed at them. In the living room, the others waited. "Oh, Fraser, I just know something's wrong," Mary said. Outside the attic, the angels were still stuck. "Marley, sound your horn," Joan said. But Marley didn't want to. It would make too much noise. "Marley," Joan insisted, "sound the horn." So Marley sounded her horn to let the other ornaments know they were in trouble. Oliver and Edsel hopped off the tree and headed outside. They saw that Marley and Joan were stuck, cold and shivering. "Oliver, I'm not going to be able to help. Nellie glued my ladder down. I'm useless," Edsel said. "Edsel, you are strong enough to break that glue. I know you can do it, Edsel. You are not useless," encouraged Oliver. With that encouragement, Edsel broke the glue and extended the ladder all the way to the window. Oliver ran up the ladder and pushed as hard as he could. At last, it creaked open, and Marley and Joan were free. The angels flew back in the house. As they did, Joan looked back and said, "Keep up the good work, Oliver." Inside the attic, Nellie gave Oliver a very mean look and said, "I'm going to get you, Oliver." Marley and Joan flew inside, and Oliver and Edsel followed. All the ornaments cheered Oliver and Edsel. Marley and Joan were relieved, but still shivered. "We have to get through to Nellie," Joan said. "I think she's really sad." Marley agreed, and they convinced all the others to find a way to cheer her up. Back in the attic, Nellie didn't understand why Marley and Joan had tried to be kind to her. It must be a trick, she thought. The children came back inside and raced to the tree. "We had so much fun building a snowman," Holly told the ornaments, and then introduced Ruthie and Stephen to each of them. "You must have been really bored in here," Holly continued. "Next time, we'll bring you with us." "We're fine where we are," Marley and Joan said in a chorus. "We think we'll stay put." At that, the other ornaments giggled. "Tell us the rest of the story of how you met Belle," Henry said. "It was so much fun at first, playing and singing with all my new friends," Oliver said. "I never knew make-believe could be so magical. But after a while, it started getting harder and harder." "What happened?" Henry asked. "One by one, my friends stopped talking and playing with me. I spoke to them, but none answered. I felt all alone. And it was Christmas Eve." Oliver choked up, so Belle finished the story. "Everyone was singing carols and having so much fun, but sadly, Oliver just felt alone," she added. "That's so sad, Oliver," Holly said. "Oh, no worries," Oliver said. "Thanks to Santa, it turned out just wonderful." "What happened with Santa?" Henry asked, with his eyes wide open. "That night, a loud noise came from the fireplace," Oliver said. "When I looked, I couldn't believe it. Santa was filling all the stockings. Then he came to the tree. Santa could tell I was sad, and after I told him what was wrong, he said, 'Oliver, as long as you believe in the magic and kindness of Christmas, your heart will always be filled with loved ones. You just have to keep believing.' I promised Santa I would. Then I went to sleep." On Christmas morning, your dad came over to exchange gifts with your mom. He gave her a sweater, and she gave him a watch. Then he gave her a small box. "What was in it?" Holly asked. "A beautiful Belle ornament. Your dad bought it for your mom because she lived on Bell Street. He thought that was really neat," Oliver said. Both Henry and Holly laughed. "That's what Daddy told us earlier," Holly said. "After your mom and dad left, I remembered Santa's words. I started saying that I just had to believe," said Oliver. "So I decided to speak to the new ornament. 'Hello, my name is Oliver,' I said. Belle's eyes opened and she replied, 'It's very nice to meet you, Oliver. My name is Belle.' I couldn't believe I finally had a real friend." "That was our first Christmas," Belle said to the children, "and that made it special. But each Christmas becomes even more special because we have more and more memories of all of our loved ones gathered together." After Stephen and Ruthie left, Mom and Dad came in and told the children it was time to go to bed. They tucked them in, then went to bed themselves. Meanwhile, the magic of Christmas lit the tree lights and all the ornaments sang together. Their hearts were filled with joy, remembering the story of Oliver's very first Christmas with Belle and thinking about their plans to cheer Nellie. Little did they know that Nellie was plotting something very different for them. Back in the attic, Nellie was trying to think of her next move to get back at the ornaments. "I've got it," she screamed. She had a plan. one that was sure to teach all the ornaments a lesson, one that was sure to ruin Christmas for all of them. And so, dear friends, as you hang us on your tree this year, sit down with your family and ask them to tell you the stories of all your ornaments. You never know, there just might be another Oliver and Belle hanging on your own Christmas tree, because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met Marley and Joan and Abby. Love, Oliver. Oliver the Ornament meets Marley and Joan and Abby, written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Kyle Hernandez. The Nelson family was filled with the Christmas spirit as they continued decorating their house and sharing in their special holiday traditions. Henry and Holly had invited their friends Stephen and Ruthie to join the festivities. Ruthie whispered to Holly, "I still can't believe your ornaments can talk." With that, all the ornaments began to giggle. As they did, the children couldn't help themselves and began laughing too. "What's so funny?" Mom asked as she continued unpacking the decorations. "Oh, nothing, Mom," Henry replied. "Well, look what I found, Ruthie. Remember this?" Mom asked Ruthie as she unwrapped Nora the menorah. "I sure do," replied Ruthie. "That was really nice of you to get her for me." "Well, it was all Holly's idea," Mom added, as she placed Nora on the table. "That was the same year your grandparents gave you Marley and Joan and Abby," remembered Oliver. "Why don't you tell us about it?" So Holly began. "Remember, I was getting my tonsils out. It was right before Christmas, and the grandmas and grandpas came to visit me in the hospital. First, Grandma and Grandpa Z came in and gave me Marley and Joan. They told me that these angels would look out for me. And that's what we've done ever since, Holly," chimed in Marley and Joan from the top of the tree. Holly continued, "Then Grandma and Grandpa N came in and gave me Abby. They told me that as long as I had a church near me, I should never be scared of anything. Then they hung Marley and Joan and Abby above my bed to look out for me," Holly concluded. Shortly after the grandparents left the hospital, Holly's friend Ruthie arrived for a visit. "How are you feeling, Holly?" asked Ruthie. "My throat hurts a lot, but they give me lots of ice cream," answered Holly. "Look at your ornaments," Ruthie said, as she pointed to Marley and Joan and Abby. Even though Ruthie didn't celebrate Christmas, she loved ornaments. "I got them from my grandparents," said Holly, who then added, "We should have a menorah for you in here." "Oh, that's okay," replied Ruthie, who then asked Holly just how much ice cream she gets in the hospital. The next day, Mom and Dad arrived to bring Holly home. "You're such a brave little girl," Dad told Holly as he helped her with her shoes. "Before we go home, can we go get a menorah?" asked Holly. Startled by the question, Mom replied, "Sure, but why do you want one?" "Well, Ruthie doesn't have a Christmas tree at her house, but she has a menorah. So I think we should have one at our house when she visits. So it's more like home to her," said Holly. With that comment, both Mom and Dad proudly smiled at their little girl. Hearing this story for the first time, Nora said, "That's the first time I've ever heard that story." The children were shocked beyond belief. They knew the ornaments came to life, but didn't expect the same from Nora. Just as they were about to ask Nora a question, Mom and Dad entered the living room to help them get ready to go skating at the town square. "Oh, they're going to have so much fun skating," said Oliver. "That's where Mom and Dad had their first date." Oliver then began telling everyone the story of their first Christmas. But before he could finish the story, they all heard loud noises coming from the attic. It sounded like hammering, drilling, and sawing. The ornaments all wondered what was going on in the attic and what Nellie was up to. After having her last plan to ruin Christmas stopped by Oliver and Edsel, Nellie was more determined than ever to ruin Christmas for the Nelson family and the ornaments. This time, though, she planned everything out perfectly. She measured twice and cut once. She hammered and drilled. She arranged everything so her plan would come out perfectly. Now, all she needed was a visitor. Meanwhile, back in the living room, the ornaments got Nora up to speed on what Nellie had been doing. "I think I should go up there and give her a piece of my mind," an upset Nora stated. That's a bad idea, said Fraser. I think I should go talk to her. Well, then I'm going with you, said Mary. The Ornament's plan was simple. They were going to invite Nellie to the kitchen to bake Christmas cookies, but then surprise her with a party. I think that will really cheer her up, said Mary. Just be careful, insisted Marley and Joan, who still remembered how Nellie had locked them in the cold, wintry attic window. With that warning in mind, Fraser and Mary headed to the attic. Once in the attic, Fraser and Mary found Nellie. Hi, I'm Fraser, and this is Mary. We thought we'd come up and introduce ourselves to you. Oh, you did, a suspicious Nellie answered. I'm actually glad you're here, said Nellie. You know, it's rather hot in here. Do you mind if I open the window? She asked. Fraser and Mary thought Nellie was up to something, but they didn't know what. Nellie continued, saying, You know, I've just built this really fun seesaw, but I don't have anyone to play with. Will you play with me? Well, okay, replied Fraser nervously, as he and Mary stood on one end. As soon as Fraser and Mary were in place, Nellie jumped as high as she could, landing on the other end of the seesaw. Shocked and frightened, Fraser and Mary were catapulted into the air, out the window, and straight toward the garbage can. Frightened beyond belief, Mary screamed for help. As she did, the other ornaments looked out the window in disbelief as they saw their friends fly across the sky and land right in the garbage can. What in the world has she done now? Asked Buck. Oh my, look, Oliver, screamed Marley and Joan. The garbage truck is about to take them away. We have to save them. Hang on, Fraser. Hang on, Mary. We're coming to get you, screamed the three friends as they flew toward the garbage truck. Quick, let me grab you, hollered Oliver as he reached down to get hold of Fraser's lights. Just in time, Oliver saved the day by catching his friends right before they were about to be dumped into the garbage truck. Fraser and Mary were covered in garbage, but relieved to be okay. Joan yelled from above, Keep up the good work, Oliver! Back in the attic, Nellie couldn't believe her eyes. Oliver had thwarted her plans again and saved the day. I'll get them yet, she promised. Just then, she looked down and saw an envelope with her name on it. It must be another trick, she thought. That was a close call, said Fraser, still covered in garbage. I'm not going up there ever again, promised Mary. But soon, they all began discussing a new plan to get through to Nellie. Meanwhile, Nellie was reading the invitation to bake cookies. It has to be a trick, she thought. Did you have a chance to give the invitation to Nellie? Asked Abby. Nellie was now listening to the conversation from the attic. No, Mary answered, so now we're going to have to find another way to trick her to come down here. Soon, they all began whispering about their new plan to get through to Nellie. Aha, said Nellie to herself, they are up to something. Not before I show them first. This time, she had a new plan, and it was going to take place tonight, ruining Christmas once and for all. Just then, the whole family arrived home. Mom and Dad brought hot chocolate to Henry and Holly, who now were in front of the tree. You know, Holly, there's more to the story of when Marley and Joan and Abby were given to you, said Oliver. What do you mean? Asked Holly. So, Oliver began telling how Marley and Joan had taken Abby for a ride that night and went to visit every child in the hospital. One by one, they entered hospital rooms, spreading good wishes and hope to all the children. Holly and Henry were amazed. They knew that the ornaments were looking out for Holly, but had no idea that they had spread love and kindness to all the other children at the hospital. Just then, Dad came into the room to tell the children it was time for bed. Once the children were out of the room, Edsel asked Marley and Joan and Abby, So that's how you knew to grab Oliver and help him save Fraser and Mary? That's right, they answered, but we never thought we'd be doing it again. Before going to sleep, the magic of Christmas lit the tree, and the ornaments all began singing together, thinking of how wonderful it is to be kind to others. Tomorrow was going to be their chance to do so with Nellie. At the exact same time, though, Nellie was making her way downstairs for a surprise of her own, one that no one would forget. And so, dear friends, as you hang us on your tree this year, sit down with your family and have them tell you the stories of all the ornaments on your tree. You never know, there just might be another Oliver, Marley and Joan, and Abby hanging on your own Christmas tree, because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met Fraser and Mary. Love, Oliver. Oliver the Ornament meets Fraser and Mary. Written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Annika Ball. The entire Nelson household was fast asleep. Henry and Holly had gone to bed hours ago, while Mom and Dad had just turned in. Each of the ornaments had also finally fallen asleep after an exciting day. That is, every ornament except for Nellie, the naughty ornament determined to ruin Christmas for everyone. Up until now, Nellie's attempts to ruin Christmas had been stopped by Oliver and his friends. Oliver's kindness, courage, and determination helped him save Marley and Joan and Fraser and Mary from naughty Nellie's plots. This time is going to be different, Nellie told herself as she crept down the stairs. This is the best idea yet, she thought to herself. I'm going to get all of them and teach them a lesson. So, Nellie slithered and crawled her way across the floor and went under the Christmas tree. Once at the base, she loosened each of the screws that were holding the tree in place. Now, all that would be needed is someone to walk by or a breeze to blow, and kaboom! The entire tree would fall over, smashing all the ornaments and ruining Christmas for everyone, Nellie thought. Nellie smiled to herself and then made her way back toward the stairs. Not so fast, exclaimed Nora to a startled Nellie. Let me go, Nellie demanded, as Nora's foot was firmly planted on her tail. Not until you tell me what you're doing down here, demanded an upset Nora. None of your business, Nellie screamed as she broke loose and ran back to the attic. What's all the commotion? A sleepy Oliver asked Nora. I just caught Nellie down here, and I know she was up to something, Nora answered. Look at this, she said. Nora reached down and picked up hair from Nellie's tail that was left behind. The hair was tangled and dusty, dirty and worn, but surprisingly, there were also white, pink, and silver hairs hidden underneath the others. By now, all the ornaments had woken, hearing all the commotion. As Nora held the hair from Nellie's tail, Marley and Joan questioned if it was really Nellie that Nora had seen. The hair from the tail simply didn't look like what they had seen when they encountered the angry ornament. Fraser and Mary agreed, saying, That looks really cute. Nothing like Nellie looks. After much discussion, but no understanding of what Nellie had done, the ornaments hopped on the tree to go back to sleep. They didn't realize that by doing so, they had tilted the tree a bit and had loosened it even more. Then, one by one, each of the ornaments went to sleep. Rising extra early the next morning, Norb, Teddy, and Nora decided to head to the attic to learn more about Nellie and what exactly she was up to. In the very back corner, they found an old dresser covered in dust and cobwebs. They opened the lowest drawer to find what appeared to be a bed. The bed was made from old newspapers, really old newspapers, and a picture. This has to be a clue, Teddy yelled to Norb and Nora. Maybe this will help us understand her better, Nora yelled back to her friends. And then we could help her, she finished. Meanwhile, Nellie was hiding in the other corner of the attic, wondering what the other ornaments were up to. Why would they care about me, she thought to herself. This must be another trick. Well, it doesn't matter. Before long, the entire tree is going to come crashing down, finishing them all off. The three friends went back downstairs to tell the others about what they found in the attic. If we understand more about Nellie, maybe we can help her, Oliver told the others. There has to be a reason why she's so angry. Listening from the attic, a skeptical Nellie still didn't believe them. Why would they want to help me? They're trying to trick me, she thought. Just then, Henry and Holly came to see their friends on the tree. Will you tell us another story, Oliver? Asked Henry. So, Oliver began telling the children about when he met Fraser and Mary. Your parents had been married for over a year, Oliver began, and they wanted to find the perfect Christmas tree and wreath for their new home. They went to store after store, but just couldn't find the right ones. The trees that they found were too fat, then too skinny, then too tall, and then too crooked. Hours into the search, your parents began getting frustrated. But just then, they drove by the most magical Christmas tree farm they had ever seen. As soon as they walked in, they saw hundreds of the most beautiful Christmas trees ever, Oliver continued. How are we going to pick the right one? Mom asked Dad. They're all so pretty, she continued. After a while, they decided on one in the back corner, a Fraser fir that they knew was just perfect, Oliver told them. Then they also picked out a wreath for the front door. Before leaving, both Mom and Dad snuck into the Tree Farm gift shop to buy each other a very special gift, Oliver concluded. This is the best tree ever, Dad said to Mom as they began trimming the tree. And look how Oliver is right in front, Mom replied. Well, I think Oliver needs a friend, Dad said. So he handed Mom a gift box. In it, she found a beautiful Christmas tree ornament. When she opened it, she smiled and said, "We'll call him Fraser." Then she handed Dad the gift she had purchased for him, saying, "Merry Christmas." Dad opened it and saw the beautiful wreath ornament. "Let's call her Mary," Dad said. At that, both Mom and Dad smiled, looking at their new tree, knowing how much joy it would bring to them and their loved ones this Christmas season. "You see, children," said Oliver, "every ornament tells a story. Now, Henry and Holly knew how Fraser and Mary got their names and how nice it is to give gifts to those we love." Just then, Mom and Dad came in to take Henry and Holly to school. "That was a great story," said Teddy to Oliver. "I really like it." Teddy was interrupted by a loud noise coming from the attic. Nellie had started jumping up and down, rattling the entire house. The tree was now waving back and forth, as the ornaments all feared for the worst. "I'm so tired of their stories," she thought to herself, as she continued to pounce on the floor. "Oh no!" The ornaments all screamed in horror. "We're going to crash," they thought. Almost as if it were in slow motion, the tree began falling to the ground. Each of the ornaments held on for dear life as the tree stumbled toward the floor. Just in the nick of time, Oliver jumped off the tree onto the window frame, took off his sling, and lassoed the tree, pulling it back upright to safety. "So that's what Nellie was doing down here last night," exclaimed Nora. "She loosened the tree." As Oliver continued to hold the tree, Nora, Belle, and Buck tightened the screws on the stand. Joan hollered out, "Keep up the good work, Oliver." Nellie was watching from the attic in disgust as Oliver once again foiled her plan. How could it be that Oliver, the ornament who only had one arm to work with, was always able to save the day? It doesn't make sense, she thought to herself. Back in the living room, Oliver asked if everyone was all right. "We're all fine," hollered Norb. "Everyone looks okay," Buck said. "Where's Teddy?" asked Mary. Then, on the other side of the living room, the ornaments all saw Teddy. The shell he was encased in had shattered. "Are you okay, Teddy?" hollered Norb. "Why are you hollering?" Teddy answered. "I can hear you just fine." For the first time ever, Teddy didn't have to holler to be heard, and his friends didn't have to holler at him so he could hear. "I kind of like this," Teddy said, of being out of the shell. "It's kind of fun," he continued, as he began to dance around. "I think I'm going to have to thank Nellie," Teddy joked. All of the other ornaments laughed and giggled as they watched Teddy dance on the living room floor, enjoying his newfound freedom. Back in the attic, Nellie was not amused. "I'll have to find another way to get them," she thought. Hours later, the Nelsons returned home to find Teddy asleep on the floor next to all the broken glass from his bulb. "Oh no," said Holly, "he's broken." "No, look, Holly," said Dad. "He actually looks even better now. Why don't you hang him on the tree?" he continued. So, Dad picked up Holly, who hung Teddy on the tree right next to Oliver. "How did you get Teddy?" Holly asked in a sleepy voice. "We can tell you that story tomorrow, because every ornament tells a story," Dad said. Then he and Mom took Henry and Holly upstairs and put them to bed. Back in the attic, Nellie was getting ready to go to sleep. Before she did, she looked at the picture of the two little girls and with a tear in her eye, wondered why they left her behind all those years ago. After the family went to bed, the Ornaments planned their next move to help Nellie. They had a clue, and maybe that could help them understand her better. She had done some really mean things, but it was Christmas, and the Ornaments were determined to help her. With those kind thoughts, all the Ornaments went to sleep. And so, dear friends, as you hang us on your tree this year, sit down with your family and have them tell you the stories of all the ornaments on your tree. You never know. There just might be another Oliver, Fraser, and Mary hanging on your own Christmas tree. Because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met Teddy and Norb. Love, Oliver. Oliver the Ornament meets Teddy and Norb, written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Annika Ball. The Nelson household was bustling and filled with the holiday spirit as they hosted their annual Christmas party for family and friends. The Ornaments loved this tradition and how much it meant to everyone who joined the celebration. But at the same time, they were more determined than ever to find out why Nellie, the mean ornament in the attic, kept doing all those naughty things. Oliver started. We have to get to the bottom of why she's behaving the way she is, he told the others. The other ornaments all agreed, with Crystal saying we might have to ask Holly and Henry for their help. Buck replied, only as a last resort. We don't want to involve them unless we have to. Back in the attic, Nellie was at it again, measuring, cutting, hanging, and plotting. This is the best idea yet, she thought to herself. Now I've just got to decide who's going to be my next guest. I've got it, she thought, as she imagined her new naughty plan. Back downstairs, Henry and Holly gathered their friends Stephen and Ruthie, and their cousins Dory, Ray, and Jeannie around the Christmas tree. Their cousins couldn't believe that the ornaments had come to life and were speaking. They were amazed by the magic of what they were seeing and hearing. Oliver quickly got Holly and Henry's cousins up to speed on the stories of Belle, Marley and Joan, Abby, Fraser, and Mary, telling how each of the ornaments had entered the family's collection. When he had finished, Holly said, "And look at Teddy, everyone. He used to be in a glass bulb, but it broke last week. I think he's even cuter now, though." The others all agreed as they looked at Teddy with his newfound freedom. "Will you please tell us about Teddy, Oliver?" asked Holly. "I'll be glad to," replied Oliver, "but I'll need Norb and Teddy's help." "You see," said Oliver, "it was on your parents' honeymoon in Bavaria. That's where they found Norb, but without an accident, Teddy would have never made it to our family," he added. "What do you mean?" asked Henry. "Well, I think Teddy and Norb should take it from here," Oliver said. So, Teddy and Norb began the story of how they made it all the way from Bavaria to the Nelson Christmas tree. "Close your eyes," Norb started. "Imagine the most magical Christmas shop located in the heart of the Bavarian mountains. It was called Eberhardt's Tannenbaum House. As beautiful as the store was from the outside, it was even more so inside. Every night, the store owner, Helmuth, would close the store and sing a carol with all of us," Teddy said. "It was so much fun for all of us to sing together," Norb continued. "One day, your parents walked in and chose Norb as a reminder of their trip to Germany," said Teddy. "We had been best friends for years, so Teddy was happy for me, but he was sad to see me go. I looked back at him and could see just how sad he was," explained Norb. "When our other friends saw just how sad I was, one of them rolled me off the tree in front of your mom and dad, but when I hit the floor, I was shaken off the stand that I was glued to," said Teddy. "So that's why you were always bouncing around in the glass bulb," said Henry, now realizing what had happened to Teddy. "That's right," said Teddy, as he continued the story. "I rolled right in front of your mom, who picked me up and saw that I had broken off my stand. 'Look at this little guy. He's so cute. We have to get him too,' your mom said to your dad. And with that, your mom and dad left Bavaria with Teddy and Norb. You see, children, every ornament tells a story," said Oliver. What a great story, the children cheered. The children loved hearing these stories, but the family dinner was beginning, so they left the ornaments to join the others. Meanwhile, the ornaments were talking about the wonderful story of Teddy and Norb when they suddenly heard Nellie call out from the attic, "Crystal, will you please come up here and play with me?" "This could be our chance to get through to her," said Edsel. "I'll go with you, just in case," the brave fire truck added. "No, Edsel, I think I should go by myself," replied Crystal. "She called out to me, so maybe I can get through to her. You know, girl to girl." So Crystal left the tree and flew up the stairs into the attic. Before leaving, though, she had made a plan with the other ornaments, just in case she didn't return in 1 hour. Upon arriving in the attic, Crystal saw that Nellie had built a swing right in front of the window and was sitting on it. "Why don't you join me, Crystal?" asked Nellie. "Okay, that looks like fun," Crystal replied as she flew to the swing and sat down. "I'll fasten your hook right here," Nellie offered as she tied Crystal's string to the side of the swing. "Well, thanks for coming, Crystal. See you later," Nellie laughed as she jumped off the swing and left the attic. How strange, Crystal thought, who was now going to return downstairs. But she quickly realized that Nellie had tied her up so tight that she was trapped and couldn't leave. "Another trick," Crystal thought to herself. "Well, at least we have a backup plan for the others to come get me. I'll just wait here for my friends and enjoy this view," she thought. A few minutes later, the sun was in full view and shining directly on Crystal. No matter how high she tried to swing, the sun was beaming directly on her. With all the bright sunshine on the beautiful snowflake, Crystal began to slowly melt. "Oh no," she thought. "I hope they get here soon." Back in the living room, the ornaments were all wondering what was going on with Crystal and Nellie when water started to drip on them. As they all looked up, they realized that the water was coming from the vent in the ceiling, the vent that went directly to the attic. "What in the world?" Oliver exclaimed as all the ornaments were now getting dripped on. "Oh no, it's Crystal!" Buck hollered, realizing their friend could be in grave danger. "We have to get up there now," he finished. So the friends all jumped off the tree and hurried to the attic. Once in the attic, they saw that Crystal had melted and was barely recognizable. The ornaments all looked on in horror at the scene. "Crystal, are you okay?" asked Oliver. "I'm okay, but please get me down and get me outside into the cold," she answered in a weak little voice. The ornaments looked up at the window and made a plan. Nellie was even trickier this time, as she had moved the window handle from the bottom to the top where no one could reach it. No one except Oliver. Oliver took his sling off, flung it through the handle, then hung from the window, trying to pull it open. Then, one by one, each of his friends jumped on as well, bringing more weight onto the window handle until they could finally pull it open. Once open, the friends swung Crystal outside to catch an icy blast of winter air, bringing her back to her old self. Joan then hollered out, "Keep up the good work, everyone." Now that Crystal was free, the entire group of friends rushed back to the tree. "We have to get back downstairs before anyone notices that we're gone," exclaimed Nora. The ornaments got back on the tree just before the children returned from dinner. Seeing their friends looking winded and worn, the children realized something was wrong. "What's going on, Oliver?" asked Jeanie. The ornaments all looked at each other and nodded in agreement to tell the children all about Nellie and what she had been up to. After hearing the stories of what Nellie had done and about the picture they found, Henry said, "That picture sounds a lot like the one at Grandma and Grandpa's house." So the children ran to the attic to see for themselves. Sure enough, it was the exact same picture. "We've got to ask Grandma and Grandpa about this," said Henry to Holly. "Maybe they know something about Nellie," he concluded. The children returned to the tree and made a plan with the ornaments. "Let's write a letter to Santa and tell him all about this," suggested Holly. The others agreed, with Edsel saying, "If anyone can get through to Nellie, it's Santa." With that, the children and ornaments wrote a letter to Santa, asking him for his help. Meanwhile, Back in the attic, Nellie had heard the entire conversation. If Santa gets involved, I'll have to get an even better plan, she thought. And just then, a light bulb went on in Naughty Nellie's mind with a plan that would finally ruin Christmas, just in the nick of time. That night, after the party ended, and as the ornaments and children went to sleep, they were all excited because Santa was going to make this the best Christmas ever. They were sure that he was going to be able to help them. With those happy thoughts, the ornaments and children went to sleep, eagerly awaiting Santa's reply. And so, dear friends, as you hang me on your tree this year, sit down with your family and have them tell you the stories of all the ornaments on your tree. You never know, there just might be another Oliver, Teddy, and Norb hanging on your own Christmas tree. Because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met Edsel, Crystal, and Buck. Love, Oliver. Oliver the Ornament meets Edsel, Buck, and Crystal. Written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Michelle Munn. It was Christmas Eve, and the Nelson household was ready for the big day. The house was decorated, the cookies were baked, and the shopping was done. Most importantly, though, the children and the ornaments were eagerly awaiting a visit from Santa. They knew he could help get to the bottom of the mystery of Nellie, the naughty ornament in the attic. "Do you think Santa got our letter?" asked Henry. Oliver quickly responded, "I'm sure he did. We're just going to have to wait for him to help us." "When Grandma and Grandpa come over, maybe they can help too," added Holly, knowing that the picture they found in Nellie's dresser looked just like the one they saw at their grandparents' home so many times. Up in the attic, Nellie was listening to the whole conversation, laughing to herself at how upset everyone was and thinking that she had made the best plan yet to ruin Christmas. Not just for the ornaments, not just the Nelsons, but for everyone in the whole wide world, Naughty Nellie thought. Back downstairs, Oliver tried to calm everyone down, saying, "You know, we just have to have faith in Santa. He's going to be able to make everything better." Henry agreed, adding, "Let's talk about something other than Nellie. Oliver, will you tell us the story of how you met Edsel, Buck, and Crystal?" Oliver replied, "Crystal, why don't you start the story?" So Crystal began. "It was 7 years ago, 2 weeks before Christmas, and it was the biggest snowstorm that Sheboygan had ever seen. For 3 straight days, it snowed and it snowed and it snowed. The snow blocked the roads, closed the schools, and shut down all the stores," she continued. "The entire city was closed." "But that didn't stop you, Henry, from having a say," Crystal finished. "What do you mean?" asked Holly. "Well," said Buck, "your mom was just about to have her first baby. That's you, Henry." Henry's eyes grew bigger than Edsel's headlights as he listened, now knowing the story had to do with him. "What happened?" Henry eagerly asked. "Even though your mom wasn't expecting to bring you into the world for another 2 weeks, you had a different plan, Henry. You were kicking your mom's belly so hard that she knew she had to get to the hospital," recalled Oliver. Holly laughed, saying, "Why did you kick Mommy so hard in the middle of the storm?" Henry and all the ornaments giggled at Holly's funny question. "Knowing that Henry was on the way, your mom and dad left the house. Even though the winter blizzard was still raging, they knew they had to get to the hospital," Edsel told them. "But within a mile of leaving your house, the snowdrifts were too big, and your parents got stuck on the road. They were stranded, with no help in sight," Edsel finished. Buck continued, "That is, until a fire truck and crew showed up to save the day. Your parents were towed all the way to the hospital, just in the nick of time," he concluded. "That still doesn't explain how Mom and Dad got each of you," said Henry, pointing to Edsel, Buck, and Crystal. "Well," continued Buck, "later that night, you came into the world, Henry, bringing so much joy to your entire family." Crystal then took over the story. The next day, the storm ended, and your grandparents came to the hospital, each bringing an ornament as a gift to remember your birth, Henry. Now you'll never forget the terrible snowstorm that you got caught in, said Grandpa Z, as he handed me to your mom, Crystal finished. Edsel proudly continued, and then Grandpa N gave your parents a fire truck ornament. Thank God for firefighters, he said, as he handed me to your dad. Oh, now I get it, said Henry, but that doesn't explain how Buck got here. Buck took over, saying, the firefighter who pulled your parents all the way to the hospital came to visit you and your parents. And when he did, he brought an adorable moose ornament. That's me, Buck giggled. As your mom looked up at the brave firefighter, she realized his name was Buck. And so she named me Buck, because after all, every ornament tells a story, he finished. So now, Henry and Holly finally knew the whole story of how all the ornaments entered the family's collection. But now, Henry and Holly had to get ready for church. It was Christmas Eve, after all. Moments later, the entire Nelson family was gathering in front of their Christmas tree, getting ready to leave for church. Before they did, Henry asked his grandparents, will you come to the attic with us? We want to show you something. Unfortunately, there was no time before church, so Henry and Holly agreed to take their grandparents to the attic tomorrow, on Christmas Day. With that, all the Nelsons left their home and headed to St. Pete's for Christmas Eve Mass. Back in the attic, Nellie was having the time of her life. It was Christmas Eve, and her plan was in place to ruin Christmas. My plan is perfect, she thought, as she laughed to herself. Once and for all, I'll get even with everyone for ruining all my Christmases for so many years. Downstairs, the ornaments were all singing together when they heard a loud thud on the roof. Could it be, they wondered? Had Santa already arrived? Sure enough, up on the rooftop, Santa, along with his sleigh and reindeer, had landed. After receiving Henry and Holly's letter, Santa was determined to make the Nelson household his very first stop this Christmas. Sticking out of his pocket was the letter from Henry, Holly, and all the ornaments. What good children, Santa said as he started laughing out. Ho, ho, ho! Then, with a wink of his eye, just like Oliver, Santa hopped down the chimney. But disaster struck. The chimney door to the roof had been closed and locked, trapping Santa in the Nelsons' chimney. No doubt Nellie's latest trick. How will I ever get out of here? Will I miss Christmas? Oh no, that can't be, Santa thought. Then, for the first time ever, Santa yelled out, "Oh, no, no, no," instead of "ho, ho, ho." The ornaments heard Santa and realized he was in trouble. They knew they had to save him, so they all hopped off the tree and gathered around the fireplace. "We'll save you, Santa," all the ornaments hollered. Then Oliver made a plan. One by one, with Oliver leading the way, the ornaments pulled on the fireplace door until it opened, dropping Santa right in front of them. "Ho, ho, ho," Santa laughed as he cleaned himself off, revealing his beautiful bright-colored suit. Then Santa put all the ornaments back on the tree and told them how very proud he was of each of them. "Oliver, you've never given up this Christmas season. You've shown kindness and bravery, even when it was hard for you to do so," said Santa. "And to the rest of you, you stuck up for Oliver. When you did make mistakes, you quickly apologized, and even in the face of a really naughty ornament, you showed amazing kindness. I'm proud of every one of you," Santa concluded. Santa then went back to Oliver. "Oliver, even though you got bullied for having a broken arm, you never told your friends what really happened," Santa said. "What do you mean?" asked a very curious Nora. "Well, why don't you tell them what happened to your arm, Oliver?" replied Santa. So Oliver began. "It was this past summer. It was a beautiful day, so I hopped out of my box. As soon as I did, I came across Nellie. It was the first time I had ever met her. She seemed really nice and said she wanted to take me for a ride. I had never done anything like that before, so I agreed. We rode throughout the attic, and it was really fun. That is, until she started running faster and faster and faster, Oliver explained. Concerned for their friend, Marley and Joan asked, "What happened next, Oliver?" With Nellie running so fast and jumping so high, she threw me off her saddle, crashing me onto the floor and breaking my arm, Oliver told them. Then she just pointed and laughed at me. Laughed and laughed and laughed, he concluded. The ornaments were in shock. Not only had Oliver kept this story a secret, he was the one leading the way, trying to help Nellie. Joan yelled out from the top of the tree, "You're a great guy, Oliver. Keep up the good work," while the others all cheered their kind and brave friend. Yes, Oliver has taught us a lot of lessons this Christmas season, but so have the rest of you, said Santa. But now I have to go talk to Nellie, he finished. The ornaments all wondered what was going to happen to Nellie. We know you'll be nice to her, Santa. We feel so bad for her, the ornaments said. I think Nellie is going to have a big change of heart very soon, Santa assured them. Meanwhile, upstairs in the attic, Nellie had heard the entire commotion. It doesn't matter, she thought to herself, not caring that she had almost ruined Christmas for everyone. Little did Nellie realize that she was about to get the surprise of her life, changing everything for her, the ornaments, and the entire Nelson family. Back downstairs, all the ornaments sang together as they eagerly waited for Santa's return and for the wonderful Christmas celebration ahead of them. And so, dear friends, as you hang me on your tree this year, sit down with your family and have them tell you the stories of all the other ornaments on your tree. You never know. There might just be another Edsel, Buck, and Crystal hanging on your own tree, because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met, love, Oliver. Oliver the Ornament Meets, written by Todd M. Zimmerman, illustrated by Michelle Munn. Part 1, Christmas Eve. It had been exactly 1 month since Henry and Holly discovered Oliver in the Nelson family attic. Since that time, through the magic of Christmas, Oliver and his friends came to life, telling the story of how all the ornaments entered the family's collection. That is, except the story of Nellie, the naughty ornament in the attic, who had tried to ruin Christmas for everyone. She sure had some crafty ideas, but because of Oliver's kindness and his friends' support, Oliver always managed to save the day. And now, 1 month later, after receiving the letter from Henry and Holly, their friends, cousins, and the ornaments themselves, Santa had arrived. It was Christmas Eve, and Santa made his way into the attic to find Nellie. "Hi, Nellie, where are you?" Santa asked as he entered the attic. Meanwhile, the entire Nelson family was listening to Christmas carols before Mass at St. Pete's. Henry whispered to Holly, "Do you think Santa will come tonight and help find out why Nellie is doing all those naughty things?" Mom heard Henry and motioned to him not to talk during Mass. Henry did as he was asked, but still wondered what was going to happen on this very magical and special night. Back in the attic, Santa looked high and Santa looked low. He looked to the left and he looked to the right, but Nellie was nowhere to be found. That is, until he opened the dresser drawer. "There you are, Nellie," Santa exclaimed as he yelled out, "Ho, ho, ho!" "What do you want? I just want to be left alone," Nellie pleaded. "For someone who wants to be left alone, you certainly didn't act like it this Christmas season," Santa said to Nellie. "Well, I'm just tired. For years now, I've watched family after family having so much fun at Christmas, laughing and playing, giving presents, singing carols, baking cookies, stringing popcorn. I'm just tired of it all, Santa. It's not fair. Everyone gets to have fun but me. I would have had lots and lots of fun, too, if I wasn't left behind all those years ago," Nellie finished. "Is that what you think happened, Nellie?" Santa asked. "You think those 2 little girls left you behind on purpose?" he questioned. Nellie nodded and said, "I know it is." Santa quickly responded, "Well, Nellie, I think you're in for a big surprise." "You see, Nellie, those little girls didn't leave you behind on purpose," said Santa. Then Santa lifted Nellie onto the top of the dresser right in front of the mirror. "Nellie, I want you to look into the magical Christmas mirror." As Nellie did, she started seeing different scenes. These scenes were from many, many years ago, scenes she had never seen before. "Nellie, those girls never intended to leave you behind. In fact, they cried and cried when they realized they had lost you," Santa said. Then, with a wave of his hand, Santa lit up the mirror, showing all the times the little girls told their family and friends how much they loved and missed Nellie. "There was the first Christmas without you," Santa began. "Then, when each of them had a tree of their own, and when they both had their own families. You see, Nellie, those girls missed you more than you missed them," concluded Santa. Seeing all these things, Nellie started to cry. She thought the girls left her behind on purpose, but now she realized it was a mistake. "And I was so mean to the ornaments. Oh my, how could I have done that?" she asked Santa. But then she added, "I heard them whispering that they had a plan for me." "You're right, Nellie. They did have a plan for you. They were going to throw you a surprise party," Santa told a shocked Nellie. And with that, the magic Christmas mirror lit up again, showing Nellie that the ornaments really were trying to be kind to her. "Boy, that Oliver really is a nice guy," Nellie said. "I owe him and the rest of the ornaments a big apology." "Well, let me take you downstairs," suggested Santa. "No, Santa, if it's okay, I've got something to do here. I'll come down in a minute." "Santa, thank you," a very sorry Nellie added. "No worries," responded Santa. "Now don't be long. Your friends are going to be eager to see you." With that, Santa departed the Nelson attic. As Santa appeared downstairs, all the ornaments were excited to see him again. "Did you see her?" asked Mary. "Was she nice to you?" asked Marley and Joan. "I'm going to let Nellie tell you all about it. She'll be down here soon," replied Santa. And then Santa turned to Oliver. "Oliver, I want to talk to you a little bit more," he said. "What is it?" a concerned Oliver asked. "There's nothing wrong, Oliver. I'd just like you to take your sling off," said Santa. Oliver did as he was asked, and to everyone's surprise, his arm was no longer broken. "Oliver, you're all better," screamed Belle. Edsel, in a joking way, said, "Well, my bad. I guess you're not useless after all, Oliver." With that, all the ornaments broke out in laughter, while Joan yelled from the top of the tree, "Keep up the good work, Oliver." Oliver then asked Santa, "Is it okay if I keep my sling on?" "Why would you want to, Oliver?" Santa asked. "Well, Santa, everything I was able to do this Christmas season was because I tried so much harder, because I could only use one arm. So I think the sling actually helped me," Oliver said. "Oliver, the things that you did to save Christmas had nothing to do with your arm or the sling. You see, Oliver, the reason you were able to do what you've done is because of your very big and kind heart. And that's true of all of you," finished Santa as he smiled at all the ornaments. Oliver and the others now realized that the size of one's heart is much more important than any challenge they would ever face. "I'd still like to keep the sling on, Santa, if it's okay with you," said Oliver. "That's fine," said Santa, as all the ornaments cheered Oliver. And with that, Santa finished his work and left to begin his magical trip around the world. Meanwhile, back in the attic, Nellie was feeling really bad. "How could I have been so naughty?" she thought to herself. "After everything I did, they still tried to help me. My gosh, they even wrote a letter to Santa. No, I don't deserve to celebrate with them. I'll head out on my own." And so Nellie packed her bag and hopped out the window. Nellie had lots of practice opening the window, so it was easy for her to get outside. Once outside, though, Nellie got very scared. After all, she was terribly afraid of heights. A nervous Nellie edged a bit further, planning her jump to the biggest snowbank that would cushion her. But just as she moved, disaster struck. The window came crashing down on Nellie's tail while she fell off the ledge. Nellie howled the loudest donkey scream that anyone could ever imagine. The ornaments heard Nellie's scream and knew something was terribly wrong, so half of them went outside while the other half headed to the attic, not knowing what to expect. "We'll help you, Nellie," the ornaments all hollered. Outside, Oliver and his friends were shocked to see Nellie hanging from the window. Inside, Fraser, Mary, Belle, and Crystal couldn't believe their eyes. And just like that, they all sprang into action to save Nellie. "Oliver, climb my ladder," exclaimed Edsel from below the window. Inside, all the ornaments pulled up the window. "There you go, Nellie," yelled Abby, as Nellie fell right into Oliver's hand, just in the nick of time. Nellie couldn't believe it. The ornaments that she had been so mean to had rushed in to help her. They jumped, swung, and climbed, and because of their kindness, they saved her. Once back in the attic, Nellie said, "I really have to thank you. But more importantly, I have to say, I'm so sorry for everything that I did to you." "No worries," said Oliver. "We're all here and we're all going to help the Nelsons have the best Christmas ever. Nellie, come downstairs with us," he finished. Nellie was smiling, like she always did, but this time for a good reason. It was the first time in a very long time that she once again felt loved. "If it's okay with you," Nellie said, "I'm going to stay here one more night. I'll see you tomorrow." The ornaments all agreed and wished their new friend Nellie a Merry Christmas, promising they'd see her tomorrow. After the ornaments left, Nellie went back to the only home she had known for so many years. As she did, she smiled at the picture of those two little girls, the same ones who chose her all those years ago. Part 2: Christmas Day. It wasn't long after the ornaments were back on the tree that Mom, Dad, Henry, and Holly arrived home from midnight mass. Both Henry and Holly had fallen asleep on the way home, so Mom and Dad took them to bed. Before they did, though, they looked at the presents under the tree. "Hey, Mom, look who is here," said Dad, as they saw all the presents that Santa had left under their beautiful tree. Henry and Holly were still in bed when Grandma and Grandpa Z arrived to wake them. "Henry, Holly, wake up. You know what today is," they asked the children. "Holly, it's Christmas. We have to get downstairs to see if Santa came," Henry yelled. "Wait, Henry, we have to take Grandma up to the attic first," Holly insisted. Henry and Holly then told their grandparents all about Nellie. "Grandma, I just don't know why there would be a picture of you and Aunt Millie in the dresser in the attic," said Henry. "I don't know either," said Grandma. "We must have left it behind when we moved out so many years ago." "What do you mean?" asked Holly. "Henry and Holly, don't you remember? I lived in this house many, many years ago when I was a little girl," Grandma explained. Henry quickly responded, "That's right. I forgot all about that, Grandma." "How long ago was that?" asked the curious Holly. "Let's just go to the attic," replied Grandma. As soon as they arrived in the attic, Henry opened the dresser drawer. There was Nellie, sound asleep, next to the picture of those two little girls. "Oh my!" exclaimed Grandma. "It's Nellie, our very first ornament." With that, Grandma picked up Nellie and, with a tear in her eye, kissed the ornament that she and her sister lost so many years ago. As she did, Nellie woke up and felt the spirit of Christmas more than ever, now knowing how much her family and friends loved her and how much she loved them in return. "One thing's for sure, children," said Grandma. "Nellie belongs downstairs on the tree." Once downstairs, the entire family gathered around the Christmas tree and hung Nellie on the tree right next to Oliver, surrounded by all of her new friends. "Nellie," said Grandma, "as much as we love you and as much as we missed you all these years, your place is here with Henry and Holly and all these wonderful ornaments." Grandma and her sister Millie, who had just arrived, then told the special story of how Nellie became their first ornament, because after all, every ornament tells a story. Mom and Dad and the rest of the family couldn't believe that Henry and Holly sat through the whole story without diving into their presents. But now that story time was over, it was present time. "Look, Henry," shouted Holly, "look at all the presents." And with that, Henry and Holly began tearing open present after present that Santa had delivered the night before. After all the presents were opened, the Nelson household looked like a tornado had struck it. There were toys and games and dolls and stuffed animals everywhere. "Well, the two of you must have been really good this year," said Grandpa N. The children smiled and then noticed one more gift. Holly picked it up and handed it to Henry, who read the card. "To Henry and Holly, thank you for your kindness and thank you for your letter. Love, Santa." "Holly, Santa got our letter!" Henry exclaimed. Henry opened the last gift and found it was an ornament, an adorable ornament of a puppy. "Oh, look, Henry, he's so cute. He's perfect," said Holly. Henry, looking surprisingly sad, responded, "I don't think Santa understood what I asked him for on the back of the letter." Just then, Dad said, "You mean this letter?" as he held the letter that Henry, Holly, and the others had written. "How did that get here?" asked Holly. "Well, Santa must have dropped it when he was here," Mom replied, and then she read the back of the letter. "P.S. Santa, Holly and I have tried to be really good all year. We would really love a puppy," Mom read from the letter. "You added that to the letter?" a surprised Holly asked. "I did, but Santa must have misunderstood what I was asking for," a sad Henry replied. "Henry, we've spent a lot of time talking about ornaments this Christmas, haven't we? What have you learned from all these stories?" Mom asked. Henry quickly replied, "Well, Mom, that every ornament tells a story." "That's right," replied Dad. Just then, an adorable puppy ran into the living room and into Henry and Holly's loving arms. "He did it, Mom! He did it, Dad!" Henry screamed. "Santa brought us our puppy!" Henry yelled as he hugged his new friend. And then the entire family gathered and played with their new puppy. "You're going to have to name him," said Grandma Ann. Henry and Holly realized this was a big decision. What should we name him? It has to be perfect, they thought. Then Holly exclaimed, "Look, Henry, he's dancing in the sunlight." The whole family burst out laughing at how cute their new puppy was. "Holly, that's it! That's it, Holly! That's his name!" shouted a very excited Henry. "We'll call him Sundance." And with that, Sundance became the newest member of the Nelson family. And Sundance became the newest addition to the Nelsons' collection of cherished Christmas ornaments. Once the Nelson family finished opening their presents, Mom and Dad sat down with Henry and Holly and began telling them the story of the very first Christmas. Because even though every ornament tells a story, there's no greater story ever told than that of the very first Christmas. After hearing the wonderful story of the very first Christmas, Oliver and his friends gathered around the manger to honor, respect, and celebrate the true meaning of this incredibly special day. And so, dear friends, as you hang me on your tree this year, sit down with your family and have them tell you the stories of all the ornaments on your tree. You never know, there might just be another Oliver hanging on your own tree, because after all, every ornament tells a story, like the time I met Sundance. Love, Oliver. 30 years later, every year, the Nelsons continued their tradition of decorating their Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. Henry and Holly were now both married with children of their own and were remembering the many special Christmases with Oliver and the other ornaments when they were children. "Hey, Holly, remember when we were kids and we were talking to all the ornaments?" Henry asked. "I sure do," answered Holly. "But then one year, they just stopped talking back," she finished. Mom and Dad then smiled at their children and said, "You know, they never stopped talking. You simply stopped listening." Both Henry and Holly were puzzled by their parents' words, but would soon learn their meaning. Henry and Holly's children gathered around the Christmas tree and admired all the beautiful ornaments. There were so many more since Henry and Holly were children, because every year more and more were added to the family's collection. As the children were looking, they noticed one in particular. "Hey, John, look at that one. He looks like he's going to sneeze, said his cousin Jacob, as he pointed to Oliver. John, ornaments would never sneeze. They can't talk or come to life, laughed his brother Joseph. Just as Joseph said this, Oliver sneezed a hearty sneeze. Shocked, the children all quickly responded. God bless you. Thank you, said Oliver. The children were amazed, and Oliver was bewildered. He knew his cover was blown. After all, ornaments aren't supposed to be able to speak. Who are you? Asked Zoe. Oliver answered, Close your eyes and start to imagine your grandma and grandpa years ago. I was the first ornament ever on their tree. That's right, said Grandma and Grandpa. Merry Christmas, they finished as they waved to Oliver and the other ornaments. Henry and Holly were amazed to see their children experiencing the same magic they once did. Seeing their old friend Oliver, Henry and Holly went to the tree. Let Oliver tell you all about his friends, said Holly to the children. Because after all, every ornament tells a story, finished Henry. And with that began Oliver's story of each of the Nelsons' cherished Christmas ornaments. The end. Maybe.